Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this month's community meeting for Argo Workflows and Events. My name is Henrik Blixt. I'm one of the product managers at Intuit here, responsible for Argo. And before we get started, while I do a quick minute of intro here, if you could please add yourself to the meeting notes that I just pasted in the chat, that would be appreciated. So today we have a very exciting agenda for you. We'll start off with a presentation from Seven Shifts. Then we'll talk about their use of Argo and Argo Workflow in particular. And then we'll have one of the engineers here from one of the maintainers of Argo Workflows. I'll go through what's coming and what the future holds for Argo Workflows. And then we'll round off with Alex Collins, leading a discussion on multi-clusters. We've touched on that before in the past, and we have some ideas that we want to run by the community. So Alex will do that here in a little bit. And quickly, for those of you that are new and don't know, Argo consists of 4 projects. We have 2 that are geared towards GitOps, Argo CD for doing declarative GitOps, Argo rollouts to enable progressive delivery. And then we have the 2 that we are focusing on in these community meetings, Argo Workflows, our Swiss Army knife of workload engine that a lot of you already use and know and love. And then we have Argo Events, which is our event-driven framework that can help trigger actions when event occurs in external event sources. So if you want to ask any questions during the presentation, I ask you to do that in the chat, and I'll try and keep track of that, and we'll raise those at appropriate points in the presentation. Later on, when we do the discussion around multi-cluster, then I think feel free to unmute and voice your opinions or comments as we go along. So this is also being recorded. So if anyone has a problem with that, then now is a good time to leave. And I think with that, I will hand it over here to our 2 presenters and let them take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, you can see my screen, I'm hoping here. I got it shared. Okay, we're good. Awesome. Okay, thanks for having us, everyone. It's cool to be here. So my name is Corey Jacobson. I am also here with my colleague Kawe. I'll do kind of the first half of this presentation, and he is going to jump in on kind of the workflow specific stuff. So just a little bit of detail about us. The Slack links are for the Argo group Slack. So if you guys do want to reach out to us on there, feel free. But otherwise, I'm going to jump in here. Okay, so just a quick kind of background of the company and kind of where we came from the GitOps side of things and how we ended up on Argo. So 7 Shifts. So we're up in sunny Canada, way up north here in the beautiful cold. It's actually very warm right now, which is thankful. But we mostly do restaurant scheduling. So trading shifts, we kind of have like mobile apps that different restaurant staff use, and they can trade shifts and chat and make schedules and yeah, just all sorts of features kind of primarily focused on the restaurant industry. So we've been around since 2013, and just this spring we got our Series B funding, somewhere around 20 million or so. So that was very exciting for us. We're just starting to kind of grow from that funding. So we currently have 175 employees. I'm not sure the split across engineering and support, but we have a good number of engineers, and we only have 2 DevOps engineers, which is myself and Kawe, which is kind of crazy for how many devs we end up supporting every day. So our infrastructure is run entirely on the Google platform, primarily on Kubernetes. We have a few stragglers. The data analytics team runs their own VMs at this point, so we're trying to move them into the clusters as well. So our plan is to have everything within Kubernetes just for ease of management, hopefully by the end of the year, which is great. We have 5 clusters at the moment, 2 prod, 2 staging, and our favorite, the DevOps cluster, which runs everything from Prometheus, Grafana, all the Argo apps, everything like that. And the craziest part is our app is one giant monolith. So the actual 7Shifts web app is written in PHP. It's actually written in Cake PHP, which is incredibly old, and we're aggressively trying to get off that as soon as we can. But yeah, we are a monolith, which is challenging at best, and we'll kind of touch on that as we go through here. So deployments, back in the day, I've been at 7Shifts for probably going on 5 years at this point. So when I first started, it was quite small, and we literally just had static VMs provisioned with Ansible that we would deploy code to, no auto scaling whatsoever. So we've kind of made some leaps and bounds since then by moving to Kubernetes. And I should mention our deployment process before was a very hobbled together script in Python and Fabric that all the devs would just run locally on their machine. Security was an absolute nightmare with that because basically everyone had prod access. Everyone's SSH keys were everywhere. It wasn't that fun to deal with. So in comes Kubernetes to save the day. We did a lot of really good things with Kubernetes in the beginning. We actually continued to use the Python and Fabric scripts, and just under the hood, we called like kubectl set image or rollback or whatever we had to do. And that's kind of how we were managing our deploys at the time. There was no GitOps. We weren't tracking it other than Kubernetes record feature on the set image. So thankfully, as Kawi came on board, he's like, why aren't we using Argo CD? And so that's exactly what we did. We implemented Argo CD. We kind of really kicked off our DevOps initiative. We pulled all of our Kubernetes manifests kind of out of our like monolithic repo that had everything set up. And so we had a proper GitOps repo. And with that, that's the source of truth for Argo CD. One not problem that we had is just managing secrets in general. So we did end up going with sealed secrets. We're still not sure if that's the right decision or not. It's tedious to work with at best, especially with private clusters. It gives quite a bit of problems, but so far so good. I guess it is working the way it's supposed to, so that's good. Argo CD is set up in high availability. Our DevOps cluster is quite crucial to running everything basically. So everything we can is basically running in HA mode. And that single Argo CD instance in HA mode, but it controls all of our other clusters, including its own cluster. So the DevOps is all also provisioned with Argo CD. And then we have like marketing clusters and all of the actual web app clusters. Everything is controlled with this single Argo CD entry. Security around that was pretty easy. We run everything behind like VPNs and everything. So the master authorized list in Kubernetes is what we're using to allow Argo basically to talk to all the other clusters within our projects. On top of Argo CD, we built a kind of Slack ops style tool where developers basically kind of get in line to deploy any code or to run deploy trains. And this is really cool. We have Argo set up as well to send notifications basically when we're either progressing or if something is degraded state or successfully synced all the way out. We get these handy messages throughout on our Slack channel. This has been really important for the devs to see like when their change is fully out. Because during peak-ish traffic, I don't know, it takes 20-ish, maybe 15 minutes to roll like an entire release out. So they kind of want to know when is everything out at the end. So this has been a big helper for us, just to let the devs know that, yes, go double check your change because it is completely rolled out at this point. Behind the scenes for deployments, we just interact with Git itself. We just update our manifests and commit them kind of behind the scenes. The devs don't really know that that's happening, but it gives us a really good view of who's doing what got deployed when. And it also really helps with rollbacks because again, it's just Git commands to just undo the last commit, basically push it back out. And we don't worry about anything. I think Argo's been a game changer, Argo CD there. Yeah, we have about 50 apps. I think we're a little better than 50 individual apps on Argo CD, but it manages everything without a problem. And I think I added this one in. My personal favorite feature of Argo CD is where you can click on it and just say restart deployment. That has saved us so many times where, a proxy restarts and all the connections are broken and you're just like, kick the whole deployment and roll it over. And yeah, it's quicker than actually going to the command line. So great feature. I love that one. Our CI history, we've kind of been all over the map for this one. Yeah, when I started, everything was on Travis CI. We were kind of small enough and nimble enough that it was okay. But as our team grew, it became quite expensive just to get the speed. And remember, we were on a monolith. So like the more devs you add, the more tests you add, it just slows everything down. It's not like we're breaking things out nicely and isolating everything into services. So it did become quite expensive and slow. We moved our builds to Google Cloud Build, and it worked pretty good, but it was slow and it was worse than Travis, like for cost. It was crazy. Google, I don't know what they were doing with that, but it cost us way too much. So we stopped that pretty quick. After that, we thought it was smart to hand roll our own solution. I thought it was smart to hand roll our own solution, which is obviously never something you should do. But we had a lot of fun with it. So we basically built an auto-scaling Kubernetes cluster where GitHub Actions would run on it, and we would basically monitor GitHub Actions and spin up and down depending on what our devs were doing, what the pull requests were doing, and stuff like that. So it gave us, a chance to save money and kind of really understand what our workflows should look like. So from that aspect, it was really good because we really learned a lot about our systems and how best to make them performant, especially in a test environment. GitHub Actions. So this was last year or this spring even. No, it was before this spring. It was when GitHub Actions was a bit immature, and they had a lot of outages, a lot of problems where like workflows would get stuck and like you couldn't deal with them or get them out of your queue or anything like that. So it was fairly problematic, and we spent a lot of time during the day kind of like unclogging the pipes and stuff like that. So at that point, we kind of realized that GitHub Actions maybe wasn't the best tool for us. So we started to spike other solutions. Circle CI was at the top of the list. We sent that to our CTO and basically got shut down for pricing on that because it was pretty astronomical. Again, the monolith, man, can't get away from that. GitLab, their CI solution looked really good, but we weren't ready to commit to GitLab. We're entirely on GitHub at the moment, and all of our devs, like we're pretty deeply ingrained with GitHub and all the features and different teams across it and stuff. So we felt as the organization, we weren't ready to move Git providers. So we kind of kiboshed the GitLab. We did install Jenkins. It was okay on the Kubernetes cluster. It ran and everything. I think we found that we were programming more groovy than we ever would have liked to kind of accomplish what we wanted to do. So again, it just wasn't the greatest. The devs weren't a fan of Jenkins. I don't know, it just has a bad name, I guess, at this point in the industry. So wasn't the best. So since we were using Argo CD, we decided to look at workflows. We had kind of followed it when it was released and looked into a bit. And once we looked at how to configure the graphs in YAML and like how we could template that out, I think that was the light bulb moment for us when we realized that we could really like utilize templates quite strongly. And huge credit to Coway for this. It's all of our different node pools and what everything runs on, like it's all really, really well done with just different templates to the point where we have a, I don't even know what he's called, a QA engineer, I guess, where he's not super technical. He doesn't have Kubernetes training, but he's at the point where he can go look at YAML and just be like, oh, this graph has to do this test has to go over here kind of thing. And it really kind of freed our time up as well. So we really like that, and we kind of didn't look back after we've been on that so far. We do utilize Argo events as well to basically kick off all of our workflows. So we have several GitHub hooks that just send the different payloads into Argo events, and from there we have some good filters and what we need to pull out of the JSON objects, basically like the Git SHA and the PR number, who the author is, and that kind of stuff. So events have been really good for us. We use it to build a lot of supporting Docker images as well. So we have a lot of apps just within the cluster that kind of support the monolith, different proxies and cron services and this stuff. So basically we just tag them in Git, and now we have everything automated to the point where it just fires the event to Argo, and it knows to build the Docker image, and it knows where to push it, all based on the GitHub path and everything. So that's, again, huge time saver for us. You just tag it, you wait a couple minutes, and boom, your image is ready to go on your registry already. So huge optimization for us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kawe to talk specifically about the workflows.
Sweet, Curry. Thanks. I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, so let's get started with our workflows. I grabbed some numbers from our infrastructure and the number of workflows and pods that we are creating and running daily. And right now we are creating, each workflow has 31 workflows, which means basically we are using something similar to the GitHub flow. So where you basically have the main branch or your master branch, you create your feature branch and merge it back into the master. So we do not have release branches or branch that represents environments. Everything that we do and working on is based on PRs. As soon as your dev creates a PR, Argo events kick it off and start creating the workflows for us. If you push something new, we try to delete the another workflow that if it was running previously, and we create a new one. That's one way to save a little bit of resources, because we create like tons of workflows in a busy day. And this is how we are doing. So in a peak day, we have like 8,000 workflows. Yes, that is a lot. It's usually on Fridays, when is the last day of the sprint, when every single dev wants to deploy all the changes that they are working on throughout the week. So this is usually the busiest week. In the last July month, we had 70,000 workflows. So we extract those numbers from the database that we have. We constantly clean up the objects inside of the cluster. I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but we delete everything. So we use the database to retrieve those numbers and share it with all of you. So yeah, we do consider that we are running at a considerably scale of workflows daily. Can you move to the next slide, Corey, please? Yeah, so I tried to sum up here a little bit of the configurations that we have right now running. First, the container runtime. When we did the hardening into the Kubernetes clusters, we moved everything for container T. So this is the container runtime that we are using right now. We are running at Google, so we are using GKE clusters to everything. We created a strategy of different node pools. So basically, in the main pool, this is a static one. We have the Argo tools running and any other cross tool that needs to talk with different clusters and something like this, the apps that we develop internally. So everything keeps on the main pool. And all the others, which means the Argo Workflows, we have like two burstable nodes, as we call it. The small and large, where every single pod in the workflow that we need to create goes there, based on the amount of memory that we need. That sometimes it's quite a bit, because we run everything on memory to speed up the whole build and job process. The executor that we are using for Argo Workflows is the PNS. I know there's maybe potentially a better one on the new version, but we are running right now the version 3.0.7, I think. And the new version, there's the emissary. Probably when we upgrade, I will take a look at it, but this is how we are doing right now. When you decide to run a massive number of workflows, as we're doing, there's a few configurations that you might want to take a look on the controller config map. So one of them is the parallelism, where you can configure the maximum number of concurrent workflows that can run at the same time. So this is pretty neat. We did not face problems with that so far. Only when we had GitHub outages and they decided to send all the events again. But we can circumvent that in another way. But this attribute is pretty cool. Another good way to keep your cluster running smoothly is offloading everything that you can. So we set it up a database to archive our workflows. When we create a workflow, we already use a label to send the workflows to the database. This is how we know. We have a job to run hourly and delete everything. So we do not keep with old stuff inside of the cluster because we are creating a lot of workflows every time. So we try to keep it clean as possible. So we use the garbage collector from pods to delete everything that we can, and also delete workflows every hour. One more, Corey. Yeah. So when we start working with our workflows, as you can see, sorry about the quality of the picture, but we think this represents like quite well what we try to do. We had like a giant CI YAML file where we tried to create the whole CI inside of one single YAML file. We still were using the templates, but there are so many steps that we have to handle inside of it that was super hard to manage and keep track of the chains. So this was the graph representation that Argo created when we have the whole pipeline working, which wasn't that great. So if you need to search for something or delete something else, was terrible to use the Y. Even you like try to use the filters on the top of the screen, it wasn't easy. Yes, the monolith causes a lot of frustration. Yes, so we also have small apps running, which is like pretty straightforward, where you can just build the repo, build everything that you need, tests. It's a small, runs nice. But the monolith, we have to decouple and create like a lot of sidecars every single time that we need to run a test, for example. So this becomes like super complex to manage all the components and all the tests every single time. We also aggressively cache everything that we can to save time. So we try to, the devs is supposed to keep coding as much as they can, do not get distracted. So we try to aggressively cache everything. We pre-cache images with dependencies that the code uses every single day to try to keep them updated and don't have to install it in the middle of the CI process. And the image is huge. So it's true, it's over 80 gigabytes right now. We also spent some time trying to pre-pulling everything, code something internally to do it. But yeah, this is how we are managing a little bit of the complex right now. Next, Corey. Okay, so one of the features that we used to make it easier and more manageable was using the workflow of workflows pattern, which basically means you have a parent workflow, which will create child workflows and will manage them for you, capturing output results and make it easy to visualize. So when we create a workflow, this is when you create a PR here at Savicious, this is what you can expect to see in the UI. So we try to delete the workflows, and then we start running the test, everything in parallel. So this is something super cool about Argo Workflows. If we compare with the other tools, especially Jenkins. So when we try to do like the same thing with Jenkins, I had like different problems with connections with Java or something like this sometimes, because we are creating like tons of pods every single time. And this was something that I really liked about Argo Workflows itself. It's not super. I think we don't have any problems like trying to create objects inside of the cluster, just work, which is great. We also try to make it easier for someone who does not have the expertise in Kubernetes, because all the templates are totally concentrated on focus on the Kubernetes perspective, even the names, which is great, but sometimes it's harder for someone who does not understand. And we try to create this logic of template, trying to move everything that we use inside of the template to parameters. So you can basically define every single attribute inside of the base template, just inform the items on the parameters or inside of the if with items. So if we need to build an image, this On the right side of the screen is a piece of the build step on our workflow. So even the name of the template, we pass this dynamically. You can invoke like different templates to do different activities, but you can also like provide any other parameter from Git, or if you need to bump the memory, or if you want to change the name of the context, this will show up on GitHub. You can change like everything just using the items. You don't need to go into the base template whatsoever, which was super cool. Next query. Yes, sidecars. As we explained before, every single time that we need to spin up the monolith, we need at least like Redis, Nginx, MySQL, like any other different tools running at the same time for each workflow, which is super complicated sometimes. So we are using wide sidecars from the workflows. In a way that we found to speed up everything for us was using the in-memory attribute. So you can see that we are mounting a volume integer medium memory. So this is super cool if you never use it. Yeah, I strongly encourage you to try that. Yes, you need more memory in your machines to do it, but it's quite faster. So we decided to have like bigger machines with more memory and run everything in memory. We saved a lot of time with our build pipelines, everything. We are trying to mount everything that we can in memory, even the MySQL data to run migrations, everything. It makes super fast. Mirror volume is another super cool attribute where Argo will mirror for you the volumes inside of the main container. So the main container will see the same paths that you mount from the sidecars. So if you have like an Nginx or a Redis or a MySQL, you will be able to see inside of your main container. This is make it easier to put all of the logic inside of the main container for you. Another thing that we learned, QoS guaranteed. So Kubernetes has different quality of services classes, and we decided to go everything with guaranteed. So if for some reason the scheduler put too much pods into one single node, more than it should, it will not have resources to handle with it later. When it's in the end of the build, your workflow will retry again, will fail because of out of memory of the node or something like this. So we try to use the same values for memory and CPU, and they are fully isolated. So they usually are, not usually, but almost always are not concealed by resources. So we can have and ensure that the execution will be fulfilled in the same node where it started and will not be deleted because we don't have like enough memory. This was a nice way to overcome that. And we also run everything on printable nodes. So the burstable nodes doesn't exist at all. So if no one is building anything, they just will be scaled to 0. And if we need, we're going to scale back again, but they doesn't exist. We basically warm up the nodes in the morning and we downscale them in the end of the day. And yeah, this was a nice way to save like a lot of money. So we basically keep with the cluster scaled like for 8 or 9 hours, usually the time that the devs needs, because here in Canada where we live, the time zone is quite a little bit different, but this is give them time enough to build and do everything that they need. And if they need to run something outside of the time, they will still be able to do it. Just have to wait a little bit more until the Google scale up the machines for them. Next query. Cost savings. As I told you, we are running everything that is on large and on the small pool is running on printable node pools. The only thing that is static pools is the main node pool. So Argo Workflows controller, Argo CD, notifications, any other apps that we have, they run on the static node pool. So we try to not be restarting them. We want to make sure they will be keep running 24 hours per 7, and we are not restarting them. But all the others will be on the printable pools, which is much cheaper than the static pools. For GC strategy, so yes, we try to delete everything and not keep with the objects ringing around. inside of the nodes. So this was super cool. The logs, we just have a bucket where we set it up on the controller config map, and the logs are written into a file inside of the bucket. So every time that we finish a build process, we read in a file and then redirect the devs to the proper link into the bucket. The objects are being archived into the SQL database. And if we need to delete, we can. We have the access to the database. So this was a nice way to do it. And we can also go there and delete the objects itself inside of the cluster. So they don't need to exist there inside of the cluster. We have Chrome jobs. So Argo has the Chrome workflow jobs for you, where you can easily set it up a Chrome workflow to do something for you. And we use those Chromes to scale up and down the clusters, doing their warm up for us, to purge the workflows and anything related to some recurrence. We use the Chrome workflows. Feedbacks for the devs. I think this is one of the most important things and cool that we did. So I think we have to try and take advantage of these handlers and workflow templates where you can use the notifications. So we are using commit status from GitHub for everything. So each single build step that we do, test everything, we create a commit status related. So the dev doesn't need to go inside of the Argo Workflow UI and search for anything. We just create a link into the details. If you did that, creating the details, you will be redirected to the proper URL, which is cool. Sometimes can be complicated when you work like with tons of workflows. If you try to go over the main screen and filter everything, there's a lot going on there. So this was a nice way to keep them, more focus and keep track of the things that we are making. We are also emitting metrics into the Prometheus. So Argo Workflows can create metrics for you inside of the workflow. So you can easily populate fields inside of the Prometheus and create your own views on Grafana. So this is exactly what we are doing. We know how many PRs we opened, who opened and who commit more and less, how many successes and failures, and we are using those metrics inside of 7 shifts. Something that we learned, have to be careful about the GitHub outages. When we had a problem, they usually flood us with events later, as happened last week. So try to filter as much as you can to do not receive events that you don't want to process. This can be overwhelming and you're going to scale up your cluster like a lot in our case, because we have like tons of machines that can go out, and we reached the maximum numbers last week, and this is not great. So try to create some filter based on date or something. Yeah. What else, Corey? We have more slides? Yes. How we are managing our Argo workflows. We use Argo CG to manage everything. Everything that has a representation inside of the cluster will be managed using Argo CD. We are using Argo CD for everything. What do we do to test our workflows when we are creating something new? We have another automation that we created. We created an Argo Workflow Sandbox, which will spin up everything using Kind, install Argo, and pull the templates inside of it. And then you can test it and create everything. This is how we are managing and testing everything before we open up PR and ask for any change into the environment. I think that's it. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much. That was great. I don't see any questions on the chat, but I think we have time for a couple of questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself.
I do have a question. So this is Hong. So, all right. Oh, okay. So for the CI part, I think the one thing is more about you're doing the Docker build. One big challenge normally is like you build Docker image, you always start from scratch, like in your presentation. Do you see any performance issue? I know you are using the memory FS actually will help speed up a lot. But do you have this like want to reuse the pre-cached Docker image layer to speed up things more? So have you think about that? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, we do something very close to that actually already. So the base image for, especially PHP, because PHP is kind of like the biggest container that we build and the most important one that houses more or less the entire app. So we have a base PHP image that we quite frequently, and I honestly don't know how often we do this, once a week maybe, but we basically recreate the base image, and we'll do like composer install and all the like npm installs, and we forcefully cache all that within that base Docker image, so that when you pull that in and run the actual build, it's pretty darn quick, because like all the dependencies and everything are already pre-cached and is already set up. So the base image is absolutely massive because it has everything in it. So it does take a little bit to pull it in if it hasn't been cached on the node yet. But otherwise, once you do the build and strip all that out, it had quite a performance benefit for us.
So basically, you are not caching the layers from the Docker. You are caching more about your dependency to building that layer to be very fast. Okay,
Yes.
I have another question. You mentioned you are using the events workflow to do the CI, using Argo CD to deploy everything. That means even for all the sensor configuration, workflow, template, those things, it's also being checked into the repository. Basically, you're using Argo CD to sync everything to the cluster every time.
Yes.
Okay, impressive. Thank you. Great job.
I think we have two more questions on the chat. There's one here from Tyler. I noticed that you have node events disabled on one slide. Are you not using events from Argo for anything?
Yes. We don't need those events for like anything at all. I just need to know if the workflow succeed or not succeed. And this can be captured from the workflow itself, which means if the workflow failed, the dev needs to go look at the test that failed or something else and understand the end is Docker in Docker. And that's it. So we don't feel like the necessity of needing events for anything. With the amount of workflows that we create, this can be like problematic for the Kubernetes cluster, I would say. Even running an HA cluster or clusters HA, we have 3 different masters. But yeah, I would say that for the amount of data that we pull, this can be problematic. So we just disable.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have one from Raymond here. How are you doing Docker build with containers?
Yeah, so what we are doing...
Container D. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so we are using the DNS executor, and what we do have is we have like the things in the Docker daemon side of the cluster. So this was the... Can you go back to that image, Corey, what I explained about the thing? And you basically will have like a one ephemeral... No, go ahead a little bit. One more?
One.
Yes. So we basically will have like an ephemeral instance of a Docker daemon running for you, every single build that you need to execute. So you don't need anything at all. We'll create a Docker daemon inside of your cluster, build your image, and the Docker daemon will go away. This is how we are building right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we have 2 more topics on the agenda. So I think maybe if there are more questions, maybe we can do those either on the chat here or on Slack. So I want to make sure we have time for Bala and Alex here as well. So thank you so much. Excellent presentation. This was awesome. And with that, I want to leave the screen over to Bala to go over some of the future things that are coming here in Argo Workflows.
Yeah, I'll take the Henry. Hi, everybody. I'm Bala from Argo team. So, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to talk.
Do you mind just going full screen, make it a little bit bigger?
Oh, okay. Thanks. So I'm going to talk about what are the new features going to come in the upcoming release 3.2. Since Argo 3.1, we are mainly focusing on the optimizing the resource, optimizing the cost and all the things. If you know that in the 3.1, we introduced container set and the data template to avoid creating a more pod for the simple steps. The same agenda was following to the 3.2. here also we are optimizing for a HTTP task as well as like reducing the workflow resource size. So there's a two features coming into the 3.2, mainly like a HTTP template with the agent architecture. The second one is inline template. Let me explain that HTTP template. HTTP template is mainly performing that HTTP request. The HTTP request is like a lightweight request, but the previous version, we need to create a pod to execute the HTTP request. But in the 3.2, it will create a single pod and it will execute that all the HTTP steps in that workflow. So in that agent architecture, whenever the controller is seeing the HTTP template, it will create a single pod called agent, and it will process. And there is a new CRD is introduced to communicate between the controller and agent for the output and tasks, which is called workflow task set. So agent pod and the workflow task set is exactly named as a workflow name. Then whenever the controller is seeing the HTTP template in the workflow, then the controller will create an agent pod and create a workflow task set to provide that all the task information to the agent to perform the task. Then it will receive back that all the HTTP response and update into the workflow object. So in this way, it won't create a separate pod for each request. So here the example. So you can see that there is a new template type called HTTP, which will take like a URL, headers, and arguments, parameters. So here I just have a URL for the testing purpose, but it will support that all the other parameters like headers and parameters and URL. The next one is like inline template. Inline template is very simple. Like if you have like a container or anything, you can just define in the task or step itself. You no need to create a separate template for that. So this will reduce your workflow size. Instead of having a too many string, it will reduce your workflow size. Let's go to the demo. Okay, this one. Okay, this one mainly like I'm going to demo that this example, which is having like a two steps. Two are HTTP tests. One is like a bad URL, another one is like a good URL, and which is going to execute in the agent part. Yep. Okay. Okay. So you can see that it's done. So here you can see that only one pod was created, agent pod, for these two steps. And it's completed in the 16 seconds. If you have in the normal workflow, then it will take like a 16 seconds for each steps to create a pod and execute and come back. The next demo is like an inline template. Here you are not going to see any like a performance improvement, but this will help you to reduce your workflow resource size. Yep, that's it from my side. Any questions?
I don't see anything on the chat either. Thank you, Bala.
Thank you.
There's some really cool stuff coming here
Yeah, great work.
in our next releases. So with that, I think we have about 10 minutes left. So I'll hand it over here to Alex to lead the discussion on multi-cluster.
Thank you, Henrik. So our top-rated issue in GitHub for Argo Workflows is multi-cluster. I think it has around, I'd have to check, 70 thumbs up, making it 2 or 3 times more popular than any other issue in GitHub. And what we do tend to use the number of thumbs up that issues and bugs get as probably the main way, one of the main ways certainly that we prioritize work, if not the main way that we prioritize work and kind of drive our roadmap. With multi-cluster, I think we're hearing a lot more about that from people in the community, and also I see a lot of talks at KubeCon related to multi-cluster management, but we haven't really been able to satisfactorily make sure that we understand what multi-cluster means to people. So I really wanted to open up the floor for people to talk about the kind of situations where they might want to, really for people who are running in multi-cluster environments, the kind of problems that they find when running in multi-cluster that they want to solve. And I wanted to open up that in the room. I know we've got people from PipeKit here who I've spoken to briefly about this before, so I hope we can just have an open discussion. Anybody can just chime in and add anything that they want to say about this. That's your cue. If you've got some multi-cluster use cases, that's your cue to talk about it.
Do you want to do a quick, just a high level description, maybe, Alex, of what we mean with multi-cluster, just so we have the same framework and reference? Because I know there are a lot of different views on what it is and what it means. Maybe just want to give a little context on that. Sure.
What I'll do is I have a document here where I record the three visions of multi-cluster. And they're kind of broadly, in summary, a workflow where the pods of the workflow run in different clusters or also different namespaces typically, because as soon as you go multi-cluster, you have to deal with multi-tenancy, and often you might not have the namespace have the same name in 2 clusters. So a multi-cluster workflow is by implication multi-tenancy. Then so just to kind of review people who ordered that, one example I've heard a couple of times is train a model in one cluster that's got a lot of GPU compute power, and then deploy that same model into another cluster to run it, but that doesn't need that GPU power. The second vision is multi-cluster user interface or control plane or multi-cluster API, i.e. the idea I can go to a single endpoint, API endpoint, single user interface, and all my workflows in multiple clusters are displayed in there, and they are multiplexed into the same view for me to look at it. And then the third one is really an operationals one, a multi-cluster controller. So rather than deploying one workflow controller per namespace or one workflow controller per cluster, you can deploy a single workflow controller that actually runs all the workflows in multiple clusters. The main benefit from that is really not necessarily about cost reduction, which you might think it might be one of the main benefits, but actually about simplifying operations. So those are the 3 that are kind of seem to be what people want to talk about. Does anybody need to solve these problems today?
Would it be cool if we had the ability of running workflows in different clusters? I can think about a few scenarios, but it's not something that I would say, at least for our use case, that we need that right now. But yeah.
For your use case, do you install the controller in multiple clusters? And then if so, do you visit multiple UIs?
Multiple UIs.
See, I know you have like 5 clusters
Mhm.
that you manage, and then is Workflows used in all of those clusters?
No, we just have one single installation of workflows, the DevOps cluster. And this cluster, like we do everything that we need and push to the proper repos, everything. So we don't need to interact directly with the other clusters.
Okay.
The floor is open for anybody else who wants to talk about this. If not, if you want to think about it and come back, then.
I mean, I don't have a use case personally, but one I could potentially see is a while ago we had someone from CERN talking about how they were doing large scale physics stuff. So maybe to, be able to run their workflows on a lot more nodes, since Kubernetes at 5,000 nodes becomes hard to scale. So I don't know, maybe if you talk to someone that has large compute needs, like I can't remember that person's name, but they might have a use case.
I think it might have been Clemens possibly that presented that.
I think so. Okay, let's draw this to conclusion. If you do want to comment on it, you can just go and comment on this particular issue. This is issue 3523, but it's it's a top rated issue, so you can just sort issues by reactions, and you'll find it there. And I think
Is there a working group for this? I know you tried to establish one a while back, but
yeah, so back, it's a while ago now, we did have some discussions about it. I feel like whenever we speak to people, they have different understandings, interpretations of it, different use cases they want to solve. So it's quite a varied area. There's just a lot going on I think when people talk multi-cluster, it's usually a really huge topic.
Right.
And you end up going into lots of things like multi-tenancy and so forth when you look about it. So it's very easy for people to, even for me to kind of think the multi-cluster means one thing and then have a conversation with somebody and find out it means something very different for them.
Yeah. Which is why I think the working group would be important for at least establishing that shared understanding of what multi-cluster will mean for workflows. And it's hard to proceed with this until we have that shared understanding.
Yeah.
Hoping that we get more folks that want this feature in this meeting to kind of, but it looks like maybe this time didn't work.
Yes, sure. Okay, I'll stop sharing and pass back to Henrik.
Thanks, Alex. I think we have a couple of minutes left, but I want to thank everyone for joining this month. We'll have our next one in early October, and if we're always looking for presenters, so if anyone has an interesting use case, or if you want to share something similar to what we heard earlier today about how you're using Argo Workflows at your company, or if you want to show up something else cool you did with Argo Workflow, then please reach out on Slack. You can reach out to me or Alex Collins or any one of the maintainers, and we'll get you on the agenda.
If we had time, I had a question for 7 shifts.
Yeah, I think I'll just need 30 more seconds and then can open up for more questions.
Sure.
So we've also had some of our users do blog posts in the past. If anyone want to do a blog post and you want to do that instead of presenting, you can also reach out to us and we'll help you review, maybe even co-author if you're more interested in that. So please reach out if you have anything to share, and we'll do what we can to accommodate you in whatever medium you feel the more comfortable in. So I think we have a couple of minutes left. So it sounds like there might be some more questions for 7 shifts. So I'll open up the floor again here for any additional questions. Thanks again, everyone, for attending.
Yeah. So my question was about like what were some of the biggest challenges, and then whether like some of the improvements that you would like to see with workflows.
Great question. I would say probably, Corey can correct me if I'm wrong, but the UI itself, we try to do like a lot of stuff to overcome a few UI challenges that we have. And this is the, like the most complaints about that we have inside of the company. What do you think about the Argo CD, Argo workflow itself? It's attending you. So they mostly complain about the why it's hard to search. It's hard to find what they need. That I don't know if I'm totally agree with it, but I do understand, like sometimes they just want to see the log. They just want to know what is wrong. But yeah, I would start with the UI itself, and later on, I would like to have more built-in mechanisms. So for example, if you could create like plugins or something and tie these plugins into the Argo workflows to simplify the YAMLs and do not have to be create these YAMLs every single time, this would be like super cool. These are the two first things that pop ups in my head.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, that's all I had, Henrik. I think we can probably wrap up unless there are other questions.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Alex. I also wanted to highlight that we have our very first inaugural ArgoCon coming up here in December, and the CFP is open. I'll post the link here in the chat, but there should be a link from the website as well. So if you have a presentation that you want to present at ArgoCon, it will be a one-day event. We're hoping we'll be able to do a hybrid in-person and virtual, but if you're remote and not able to travel to the Bay Area, then we will definitely have virtual options both to present and attend. So please go register, please submit your CFPs, and we'll get back and publish some speakers and some agenda here shortly. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you all next month. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.